that makes me think, you must be a popular guy at this event because people want to know, hey, how did you do it? I mean, do you get your colleagues, your peers coming up, down, we're thinking about it? What do you tell them when they ask you that?
Well, we have gotten quite a bit of attention, and so people will always, the first thing they ask is it real? What are you really running?
Right.
And we're running a full ECC stack. It's not, we have two ECC instances, and we're only running one, but we're going to do one at a time as we do it. We're already working on the next one. We're going to do CRM. We got GRC in the plans. All that's already laid out.
Right.
And but it's for real. It's it's a 3-tier landscape. It's from sales and distribution, to FICO to running the business. We run our business on that stack. It's all the integrations are there, so it integrates to the other ECC system, to CRM, to XI, to PI. All the acronyms are all involved in that. So it's certainly real. And then the next one was how did it go? And we were again just remarkably surprised at how quickly that it integrated. We actually had the technical migration from our existing SQL database to HANA was literally done in less than 180 hours. I mean, wow. Think about that. I mean, these are not days and months or whatever. So when we saw that, we made that migration, and in the petabyte project, it just worked. I mean, which frankly was a little surprising. I thought there'd be more to it than that. And that's what spurred us to say, wow, that being the case, how can we apply our rigorous regression testing so we make sure it works and get that and get that done by Sapphire. I have to say, even I didn't show that to my staff, but there was that uncertainty. Boy, that timeline was somewhat critical because we had to cover high availability, backups, disaster recovery, and that's all there. It's all there. It's all there tested, and so I would say this was when we went live. So it starts on Friday. You got a certain process you get done, including our testing, and we were back up on Sunday afternoon. And Monday was literally business as usual, and that included an enhancement pack upgrade. I mean, it really was incredible.
So I'm thinking about buying HANA. What do I need to know? Give me 3 pieces of advice so that I go in with my eyes wide open.
I would say building the right team is really important. For us, like I said, we didn't have a lot of internal knowledge when we jumped in, so we relied heavily on a good SAP partner. We had SAP consultants come in, and we relied heavily on those. Internally is just make sure you have a basis resource, someone that has BI related skills, and then someone that really knows the source of the data. So those are areas where you need, and also if you have any business users, you can bring those in as well to help with the training. So I think building the right team is very important. Also knowing your use case. We picked a very challenging use case. It was something that wasn't widely used. So we had to add extra time to kind of figure out what we needed to do before we could even start working on the technology. So if you understand your use case and if it's widely adopted already, that will make a very smoother implementation. As far as the third is just don't underestimate the project. There's so many moving parts that you just need to make sure that those are properly put into the timeline. From just installations and security and training and modeling and just building reports and dashboards.
The testing footprint and the different tools used, I understand, Ben, were one of the questions that customers in your session had the most questions on yesterday. Can you elaborate a little bit on what they were asking?
Most definitely. So what we call it is the integrated business process toolchain. The concept is very simple, and it's starting with the business processes that are key to the business, then feeding those into Solution Manager as blueprint requirements, feeding that information from a technical perspective being integrated in Solution Manager, and then coming into the testing world into Quality Center as a requirement. The whole point is that later on when changes come to the system, they can much better manage those changes from start to finish, and also later on with better automation, things like that, it'll be able to very quickly respond to the business needs.
Can you talk just a little bit about what they're able to bring? Does that help the collaboration between the business and IT? And have you seen that play out, in everyday work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A small example really was just as we were preparing to come to the show, we were having a meeting, and Bob's like, "Hey, what are you looking to solve when you go to the conference?" And I was like, "Well, this, and this." And he's just like within 10 seconds, he rattles off 3 connections that he's made at ASUG, that as I meet with those people, I'm realizing how valuable that is to really create that connection super fast. I could have struggled around this floor for a long time trying to meet the right people and develop those relationships, but Bob was really able to kick that off quickly.
You're going to get crazy increases in speeds. Our customers saying, well, what else? What else am I going to get when I do this?
Look, this is a very good question, and frankly, I would probably be in entire agreement with you when you say that for the last 18 months. SAP has done a fantastic job at launching a brand new product, being completely driven by innovation, and of course set the market alight in terms of what we're trying to achieve here. Yes, there has been a fair amount of evangelism within the market in terms of describing it as a phenomenally fast runtime environment, a real-time runtime environment. And some of those speeds and feed things that we talk about, they're material so people can get almost a parallel to be able to compare it against. Because if you don't, then it's almost like saying I've been to the moon, right? But the reality is that I actually went to, I went to Europe, okay, right? It's a bit of a strange analogy, right? But it's one's reaching for the stars, the other is essentially making as far as attempt as I could go. The attempt really from SAP's point of view is to make those changes in our customers' landscapes in a way that they're able to adopt them simply in a simplified way. And the majority of things that we've been focusing on right now from a business value perspective come about now in this current form factor that we have. In SAP HANA, Suite on HANA, of course, is that disruptive opportunity to refresh customer landscapes. The most important thing that I would highlight from HANA is the ability to be able to do analytics on live data. This is one of those big challenges that many customers have been trying to address using a variety of technologies. HANA makes that reality possibility today.
Let's harp on the BW on HANA versus going with the Suite on HANA approach. Enterprise HANA, I think, is what it's being called. And that's a big question here. How did you answer it? What would you say to that, Alan?
You're right. It's a controversial type of topic, and I've talked to a lot of different customers here, as well as events over the past couple months, and I think you're either in one camp or you're in the other camp, right?
It's Republicans and Democrats?
It goes that far. Tea Party IRS scandal all over again, right? So, first of all, we looked at that, and again, we looked at a couple factors, right? So, one of those factors being simplicity, and how HANA Enterprise can come in and reduce the layers in the overall process, reduce the movement of data. Instead of going from point A to point E, you go from A to B. We looked at ease of use. You don't need a huge administrative team to run HANA Enterprise, right? You don't necessarily need specialized skill sets. You need someone that has a SQL type developer skill set. We looked at third-party accessibility, which I think is one of the big features of HANA that is sort of undersold, maybe, and the ability to connect to that from .NET code, to connect to that from Java code. So we use the SAP Business Warehouse. We're not vested in the Business Warehouse, I think, like other customers are. So to us, given those factors described HANA Enterprise perfectly for us. So since we weren't vested in the BW, it was a clear choice to go HANA Enterprise.
Can you give us, people who don't know, what happens in these meetings? You said no PowerPoint,
Well,
so
we
that's
have a
great.
couple kind of meetings. So
Okay.
there's the meetings around Sapphire, which are much more informal. We have 2 separate tracks, the CFO type, the CIO type. And a lot of that has to do with just the environment. Our primary meeting happens in the fall around the Business Objects Conference. And at that conference, it's a very intense group. And those meetings tend to be long conversations. We'll start out with introductions. We typically focus on a couple topics. Analytics is a topic that's hot. Mobility is a topic that's hot. We'll get facilitators, and an example of one meeting, we had a facilitator. We broke into groups. We had different topics. We spent a day and a half slicing and dicing those topics, learning from each other, quite frankly, stealing ideas from each other. I mean, you get 90 smart guys in a room, and you have an open mind. It's amazing what you can come away with.
I have to say, you have to give a lot of credit. I mean, not only to the executives that are on the stage, they're making it happen every day, but you got to give some credit to Bill and to Jim. When they stepped into their positions, it's now been almost 4 years, I think. One of the first things that they said, and they said it over and over and over again, is we're listening to you. I was at DCOM in Munich early on in their co-tenure, and Jim stood up on stage and he said to an entire room full of the best and brightest developers, you should expect to see customers sitting next to you while you're developing the next iteration of SAP. And they've been true to their message, and you've been true to these programs, and customers are benefiting every day by downloading a note, being more sufficient, being more valued in the moment, and then also participating from a CEI perspective in the long-term vision. I've been in this ecosystem for 20 plus years, working with different enterprise applications, and I've worked with a lot of SAP's competitors, and I tell you this, it's a differentiator for SAP. They don't listen to their customers the way that SAP does. I've listened to Bill and Jim on stage for the last 2 days, and they regularly say, we want to build the solution for what our customers need. You need to talk with us, share that vision with us, so that we create this solution together. And this is them putting their money where their mouth is, and making sure that it's happening in the daily as well as in the long term.
You're on the front lines, you're talking to customers. There are some hesitations maybe?
Any new technology is going to create some angst amongst clients. And I think first of all, they just need to understand what is it. And so there was a phase that everyone went through where it was just educational. What is HANA? What is this about big data? What is this about predictive analytics, visualization? All of these new capabilities that HANA enables. So we've been through that. I think for the most part, people understand what HANA is. And now with the latest development with Suite on HANA, I think people are starting to really warm up to the idea of, wait, this could really be a game changer for us. So what we do with people is we take them, we have Optimal Labs, so we do a lot of proofs of concept within Optimal Labs so they can actually see the HANA technology in action. They can take some of their data and they can load it into HANA Lab, or into Optimal Labs, into our own HANA instance, and they can see the performance gains. They can gauge against what how long it takes for them to produce a report in their current system. They can compare it, and they can see how is it that you load data into HANA? How do you keep HANA updated? How do you administrate HANA? And it's just that process of educating people so that they get more comfortable that this is something that's going to work.
And it's their own data.
It's their own data, and it's a very customized experience where we literally take them by the hand and we walk them through the process. And I think that's a tremendous amount of value that we can add to customers now.
Sybase and wired platform versus point solutions. What would you say?
Sure. So Sybase and wired platform, and now SAP mobile platform as it's being rebranded, is exactly that. It's a platform, right? So you really find the value in all of the subsequent projects that go on after the initial project. So of course, part of this project, because it was Lifetime's first foray into mobility, was to set up the platform. So the platform is there, it's established, and now it's a building block for what they can do in the future with mobile. So they've got all sorts of opportunities to quickly roll out mobile solutions that they didn't have before, and if they were going with some sort of point solution, of course, it would be very limited in what they could do to expand. So they've got a lot of mobility ahead of them.
So let's say you're at one of these parties and someone sidles up to you, figures out what you do. What's your best piece of advice that you'd give them? Your best kept secret that you would share with them when they say, we know it's important, but we just can't get it going. What would you say to them?
I would say that there are key tools in Solution Manager that have tremendous amount of value week 1, week 2, week 3. So there are tools that can have an immediate return. We know that there's change management tools and testing tools that do take a lot of time to implement. They do have a payoff as well, but there are quick wins, and those quick wins typically get the business excited to do more with Solution Manager. So focus on that low-hanging fruit and focus on those quick wins.
One question that I kicked around and asked SAP was, if you're going to start asking customers to start replacing their databases and get rid of the Oracles and the SQLs, well, for a long time SAP has used the SD benchmark for ERP apps, and they're not actually going to use that for HANA, that traditional app. John Appleby, does that put customers in a bind? If you're going to ask me to wholesale replace my database system, what I'm having now, and you're not going to at least give me the SD benchmark, does that make things a little harder for someone like you who's out in the ecosystem?
I think that's a really tough question.
That's why I saved it for you.
Yeah. I mean, the SD benchmark is never going to show the power of HANA, right? I mean, it's no way, because it's the stuff that you get that you couldn't have before, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that customers need that benchmark to some degree, because with HANA, you still need to know how many sales orders can I do? How big a thing do I need? So SAP doesn't want to give the SD benchmark to HANA, and we know why. It's because HANA, you don't get the power of HANA on that, so it's not going to be as fast as you would like it to be. You're not going to be the 10,000 club for a transactional processing. That's just not the way it is. So they're going to have to reinvent something which gives a benchmark which allows customers to know, compared to an IBM P whatever, how big a HANA thing do I need to get transactional performance for 100,000 people in Walmart or whatever. And in addition to that, what are the extra things that I get with HANA that means that it's really cool?
I'm going to read a quote from Vishal, SAP's Vishal Sikka, and I want to get your take on all that. He said, at some point in the future, complex implementations should go away. And I'm going to start with Cindy. I'll put you on seat. Quickly, what do you think about it? Do you think we've got a good chance to get rid of it, really get rid of the complexity in these SAP environments?
I think that there will still be complex computations, but they will be under the covers, and they will be transparent to the business user, and that should be the goal. Not to eliminate the complex computation, but to eliminate it from being a stumbling block and visible to the business user.